You cheated on me for 27 years.
The birthday cake sat between us like a loaded tool, chocolate frosting gleaming under the kitchen lights. Hannah had turned 21 today, and Carol was telling one of her stories about convention trips and networking events. The rain drummed against our Victorian house's old windows, and I was half listening when my daughter made a joke about cheating husbands. "If your mother ever did that," I said, cutting another slice of cake, "I'd walk out that door and never look back." The silence that followed wasn't the comfortable kind. It was the kind that makes your stomach drop and your hands go cold. Carol stopped mid-chew, a forkful of chocolate cake halfway to her mouth, and Hannah's laugh died in her throat. Carol swallowed slowly, then looked me dead in the eye with a smile that didn't reach anywhere near her soul. "Then you should have left me after the first convention, Alan, 27 years ago." The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against my plate. Hannah stared at her mother like she'd just confessed a homicide, but there was something else in her expression, a look that said this wasn't news to her. "Mom," Hannah whispered, but Carol just shrugged. "What? He said if I ever did it, he'd leave. Well, here we are." I sat there like an idiot trying to process what had just happened. 27 years, our entire marriage, every convention, every business trip, every late night at the office suddenly took on a different meaning. The way Carol had changed over the years, becoming distant and cold, always checking her phone, always having somewhere else to be. "You're serious," I said, and it wasn't a question. Dead serious. Carol took another bite of cake like she just commented on the weather. "Shannon knows. Marcus from my office knows. Heck, even Brett's wife probably knows by now." Brett Landis, the sleazy regional sales manager who'd been sniffing around Carol for years. The gym rat with the expensive car, and the fake smile who always seemed to show up at our neighborhood barbecues uninvited. Hannah pushed her plate away and stood up. "I can't do this right now." "Sit down, honey," Carol said. "Your father wanted honesty." "Not like this," Hannah's voice cracked. "Jesus, Mom, not like this." I watched my daughter flee upstairs, her footsteps echoing through the old house. Then I looked at my wife of 27 years, this woman I'd built a life with, bought a house with, raised a child with. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Carol sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Brett and I have been together for 3 years, but there were others before him. The conventions, the business trips. You never asked questions, Alan. You never wanted to know." She was right about that. I trusted her completely, blindly. When she said she was networking, I believed her. When she came home late from client dinners, I heated up her leftovers. When she started working weekends and taking overnight trips, I told myself she was ambitious, that she was building something for our family. "Why?" The word came out rougher than I intended. "Why what? Why did I cheat? Or why am I telling you now?" "Both." Carol set down her fork and really looked at me for the first time in months. "You want the truth? You got boring, Alan. You got comfortable. You stopped trying, stopped caring about anything except your little security business and your workshop in the basement. Brett makes me feel alive. So why tell me now? Because Hannah's an adult now, and frankly, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of coming home to you every night. Tired of acting like we're happy." She stood up and started clearing the plates. "I want a divorce." I sat there for another minute, listening to the rain and the sound of dishes clattering in the sink. Then I got up and walked out of the kitchen, through the living room, and down the creaky stairs to my basement workshop. The basement was my sanctuary, filled with security equipment, tools, and electronics. I'd built this business from nothing, installing alarm systems and surveillance cameras for half the town. People trusted me with their safety, their secrets. I knew which houses had hidden cameras, which businesses recorded their employees, which neighbors watched each other through their windows. I sat down at my workbench and stared at the wall of monitors showing feeds from our own security system. There was Carol in the kitchen talking on her phone, probably calling Shannon or Brett, telling them it was done, that she'd finally dropped the bomb. My phone started ringing. First Shannon, then a number I didn't recognize, then Shannon again. By the time I went to bed 3 hours later, I had 47 missed calls. By morning, it was 73. By the end of the week, it was 105. I didn't answer any of them. I had work to do. 3 days after the cake revelation, I was sitting in Gina's pub nursing a beer, and listening to the rain hammer the windows. Gina O'Brien ran the best bar in town, and more importantly, she heard everything worth hearing. She was also one of the few people who knew how to mind her own business when it mattered. "You look like heck," she said, refilling my glass without being asked. "Feel worse. Carol's been calling here looking for you." "I know." Gina wiped down the bar with practiced efficiency. She was in her mid-30s, tough as nails, and had been running this place since her father died 5 years ago. "You want to talk about it?" "Not yet." Fair enough. She moved on to serve other customers, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my beer. The truth was I'd been busy. Very busy. See, when you install security systems for a living, you learn things. You learn that people are creatures of habit. You learn that they always think they're smarter than they are. And you learn that everyone has secrets. I'd spent the last 3 days reviewing footage from my own cameras, the ones Carol didn't know about. The hidden one in our bedroom closet that I'd installed after a break-in scare 2 years ago. The one in the garage that she thought was just for the cars. The motion-activated camera in our backyard that I'd told her was for wildlife. 27 years of marriage, and I'd been living with a stranger. The footage told a story that made my stomach turn. Carol sneaking out after she thought I was asleep. Brett's car parked 3 blocks away while his wife thought he was working late. Phone calls that lasted hours, always when I was out on jobs. Secret meetings at the Riverside Motel, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour. But the real gold mine wasn't my cameras. It was old man Delaney next door. Arthur Delaney was 73 years old, cranky as a wet cat, and had more surveillance equipment than the FBI. He called it birdwatching, but everyone knew he was just a nosy old bastard who liked to keep tabs on the neighborhood. What most people didn't know was that Arthur was also a retired electronics engineer who built his own equipment. I found him in his backyard that morning, adjusting a camera that was definitely not pointed at any birds. "Morning, Arthur." "Alan," he didn't look up from his camera. "Heard your wife's been stepping out." News travels fast. Travels faster when it's true. He finally looked at me, his pale blue eyes sharp as glass. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What would you do?" Arthur smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I'd make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of woman I'd been married to." "That could be arranged." "Could be." He patted his camera. "This here's got a clear view of the Riverside Motel parking lot. Amazing what birds you can spot over there." "I bet." Of course, bird-watching equipment's expensive to maintain. Requires a certain investment. I pulled out my wallet and handed him $200. "For your bird feed. Much obliged." The money disappeared into his pocket. "I'll have those bird photos ready by tonight." That evening, Arthur delivered a manila envelope to my workshop. Inside were dozens of high-resolution photos spanning the last 6 months. Carol and Brett entering the motel together. Brett's hand on Carol's rear as they walked to room 237, Carol laughing at something Brett said, her hand on his chest, the two of them kissing in the parking lot like teenagers. But the real prize was a series of photos from 2 weeks ago. Carol and Brett rushing out of the motel half-dressed, Brett pulling on his shirt while Carol tried to fix her hair. They looked panicked, guilty, and utterly ridiculous. I remembered that day. Our house alarm had gone off at 2 p.m, a malfunction that had required Carol to rush home immediately. She'd been breathless when she arrived, claiming she'd run from her car because she was worried about a break-in. The alarm hadn't malfunctioned. I'd triggered it remotely from my phone just to see what would happen. Now I knew. The next day, I took the photos to Gina's pub and ordered a beer. The lunch crowd was light, mostly retirees and people between shifts. I sat at the end of the bar where I could see the door and waited. Shannon Murphy arrived at 12:30, right on schedule. She was Carol's best friend and biggest enabler, the kind of woman who thought other people's marriages were her personal entertainment. She ordered her usual salad and white wine, then spent 20 minutes on her phone before noticing me. "Alan, I've been trying to call you." "I know." She slid onto the stool next to mine, all fake concern and predatory curiosity. "How are you holding up? This must be so difficult." "It's been educational." I'm sure Carol didn't mean what she said. You know how she gets when she's stressed. I took a sip of my beer and studied Shannon's face. She was trying so hard to look sympathetic, but I could see the excitement in her eyes. This was the kind of drama she lived for. "Actually, Shannon, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" "For keeping Carol's secrets all these years. That takes real friendship." Shannon's smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. I pulled out one of Arthur's photos and placed it on the bar between us. It showed Carol and Brett kissing in the motel parking lot, Shannon's car clearly visible in the background. Shannon went white. Alan, I can explain. No need. I understand completely. You were being a good friend, covering for Carol while she cheated on me. I finished my beer and stood up. The question is, does your husband know what a good friend you are? You can't tell him. Please, Alan, it would destroy my marriage. Would it? Interesting. I left a 20 on the bar and walked toward the door. Say hi to Marcus for me. Marcus Hoffman worked with Carol at the event management company. He was married to a sweet woman named Lisa, who taught third grade and made the best apple pie in 3 counties. He was also, according to the photos Arthur had taken, Shannon's afternoon delight on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Small towns are funny that way. Everyone thinks they're keeping secrets, but they're really just trading them. I spent the rest of the week planting seeds. A comment here, a question there, a carefully placed photograph left where the right person would find it. I didn't have to lie or exaggerate. The truth was damaging enough. By Friday, the gossip network was humming like a well-oiled machine. Carol's affair was the talk of the town, but it wasn't the only scandal making the rounds. Shannon's husband had started asking questions about her Tuesday and Thursday book club meetings. Marcus's wife had found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. Brett's wife had hired a private investigator. The dominoes were falling, and I was just getting started. Brett Landis was stupider than I'd given him credit for, which was saying something. On Monday morning, I watched from my van as he pulled into the parking lot of Carol's office building, his silver BMW gleaming in the early sunlight. He was trying to play it cool, but I could see the panic in his movements as he hurried toward the entrance. I'd been waiting for this. The night before, I'd installed a special modification to Brett's car alarm system. Nothing illegal, nothing that would cause permanent damage, just a little surprise that would make his morning memorable. I waited until he disappeared into the building, then activated the device from my phone. Brett's car alarm started screaming and screaming and screaming. The sound echoed off the concrete walls of the parking garage, a relentless wail that brought people to their windows and sent birds flying from the nearby trees. After 5 minutes, Brett came running back out, his face red with embarrassment and fury. He fumbled with his keys, trying to shut off the alarm, but my modification had overridden his remote. The only way to stop it was to disconnect the battery, which would require tools he didn't have and knowledge he didn't possess. I waited until he was good and frustrated, then walked over. Having trouble, Brett? He spun around, sweat beading on his forehead. Alan, Jesus, you scared me. Imagine how I felt when I found out about you and my wife. Brett's face went through several interesting color changes. Look, man, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You seem like the explaining type. I walked around his car, admiring the way the alarm's shriek was drawing attention from every corner of the parking garage. Nice car. Expensive. Alan, please, let me turn this off and we can talk. We're talking now. Brett looked around desperately. A small crowd had gathered at the garage entrance, drawn by the noise. Several people had their phones out recording the scene. In a town this size, that meant the video would be on social media within the hour. What do you want? Brett asked. I want you to understand something. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to crane his neck to look up at me. I'm 6'3" and still in decent shape from my Navy days. Brett was maybe 5'9" on a good day, all gym muscle and no substance. I want you to understand that I know everything. Every hotel, every lie, every time you put your hands on my wife. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Arthur's photos. Brett and Carol in the motel parking lot, her hand down the back of his pants. Recognize this? Brett's face crumpled. Oh, God. He's not going to help you. I put my phone away and smiled. But I might, if you do exactly what I tell you. What? Stay away from Carol. End it. Today. I can't just... You can and you will, because if you don't, these photos go to your wife, your boss, and everyone in your contact list, along with a detailed timeline of every time you've cheated on Linda in the last 3 years. Brett's eyes went wide. How do you... I install security systems for half this town, Brett. You'd be amazed what people's cameras pick up. It was a bluff, but he didn't know that. The Henderson's nanny cam caught you with that redhead from the bank. The Miller's driveway camera got you and the waitress from Applebee's. Should I go on? You're bluffing. Am I? I leaned in closer. Try me. The car alarm finally died, leaving us in relative silence. Brett was shaking now, whether from fear or rage, I couldn't tell. Probably both. You can't do this, he said. I already am. I pulled out a key and dragged it along the side of his BMW, leaving a long scratch in the silver paint. Oops! You son of a witch! Brett swung at me, a wild haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I caught his wrist and twisted, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make him gasp. Careful, Brett. Attack charges are a felony. I let go, and he stumbled backward, clutching his wrist. Around us, the crowd was getting bigger. I could see Carol at her office window, 4 floors up, watching the whole scene unfold. This isn't over, Brett said. You're right. It's not. I pulled out a marker and wrote cheater across his windshield in big black letters. But it's over for you and Carol. End it today, or I end you. I walked away, leaving Brett standing next to his vandalized car with a growing crowd of spectators. As I reached my van, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Detective Perry. Mike Perry was an old Navy buddy who'd gone into private investigation after his discharge. We'd kept in touch over the years, mostly Christmas cards and the occasional beer when he was in town. I couldn't imagine why he'd be contacting me now. I called him back. Alan, we need to meet. Tonight. Gina's place, 8 o'clock. What's this about, Mike? Your friend Brett. He's not just a cheater, Alan. He's been embezzling from his company for 2 years. The line went quiet while I processed this. How do you know? Because his company hired me to investigate him. They've been building a case for months. Why are you telling me this? Because you're about to get caught in the middle of it. Brett's desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. Watch your back. He hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in the parking garage. Through the windshield, I could see Brett still standing next to his car, now on his phone, probably calling Carol or a lawyer or both. This was getting more complicated than I'd planned. That night at Gina's, Mike laid out the whole story. Brett had been skimming money from client accounts, covering his tracks by manipulating the books and forging signatures. The company had been suspicious for months, but they needed solid proof before they could move. They're going to arrest him next week, Mike said. Federal charges. He's looking at 5 to 10 years. Good. It's not good for you, Alan. When Brett goes down, he's going to take everyone with him. That includes Carol. What do you mean? Mike slid a folder across the table. Brett's been paying for their hotel rooms with company credit cards. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, jewelry, all of it funded by stolen money. The feds are going to want to interview Carol as a potential co-conspirator. I opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, restaurant bills. Thousands of dollars spent on Brett's affair with my wife, all of it stolen from his company. She didn't know, I said. Can you prove that? I couldn't, and we both knew it. Carol worked in event management. She understood money and budgets and financial records. A prosecutor could easily argue that she had to have known Brett was spending beyond his means. What do you want me to do with this? I asked. That's up to you. You could turn it over to the feds, help them build their case, or you could use it to protect Carol. Why would I protect her? Mike leaned back in his chair and studied my face. Because she's still your wife, and because Hannah doesn't deserve to see her mother go to prison. He was right about Hannah, and I hated him for it. My daughter had already been through enough. The last thing she needed was to watch her mother get arrested on federal charges. But another part of me, the part that had been nursing its wounds for the last week, wanted to see Carol face the consequences of her choices. She'd betrayed me, humiliated me, thrown away 27 years of marriage for a sleazy car salesman who turned out to be a criminal. I need time to think about it, I said. You don't have time. Brett's getting desperate, and desperate men make mistakes. He might try to pin this on Carol to save himself. Mike left me with the folder and a warning to be careful. I sat at the bar for another hour, nursing a beer and thinking about choices and consequences and the difference between justice and revenge. By the time I left, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to save Carol from the mess she'd created, but I wasn't going to help destroy her either. I was going to let Brett hang himself with his own rope, and I was going to make sure everyone in town got a front row seat to watch it happen. The feds could have their embezzlement case. I was after something more personal. I was after Brett's soul. The Riverside Fall Festival was the biggest event of the year in our little town, a weekend-long celebration that drew visitors from 3 counties. Main Street was closed to traffic, lined with vendor booths selling everything from handmade crafts to fried dough. A stage was set up in the town square for live music and the annual charity auction. It was also the perfect place for a public humiliation. I'd spent the last 2 weeks planning this moment, calling in favors and making arrangements. The festival committee was made up of people I'd done work for over the years. Security systems, surveillance cameras, alarm installations. They trusted me, and more importantly, they owed me. Carol was scheduled to represent her company at the charity auction, selling donated prizes to raise money for the local food bank. She'd been looking forward to it for months, seeing it as a chance to network and show off in front of the whole town. She had no idea what was coming. I positioned myself near the back of the crowd, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, just another face in the sea of people gathered around the stage. Hannah was beside me, having driven down from college for the festival. She still wasn't speaking to Carol, but she'd wanted to be here for what she called the reckoning. "You sure about this, Dad?" she asked. "It's too late to back out now." On stage, the auction was in full swing. The mayor was serving as master of ceremonies, working his way through donated items with practiced enthusiasm. A weekend at a local bed and breakfast went for $300. A handmade quilt sold for $500. A year's worth of free oil changes brought in $250. Carol was standing at the side of the stage, looking elegant in a blue dress that probably cost more than most people in the crowd made in a week. She was smiling and chatting with other volunteers, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. Brett was there too, standing near the front of the crowd with his wife, Linda. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing around like he expected federal agents to jump out from behind the cotton candy stand. Which, given what Mike had told me, wasn't entirely unreasonable. The mayor picked up the next item, a romantic dinner for two at the fanciest restaurant in the county. This next prize was donated by Chez Laurent, and I'm told it includes wine pairings and a private dining room. Do I hear $50? The bidding started slow but picked up quickly. A romantic dinner was always popular at these events, especially with the younger couples in attendance. The price climbed to $200, then $300, then $450. $500, called a voice from the crowd. "I have $500, the mayor said. "Do I hear $550? $600. $700. The bidding war continued, with two couples driving the price higher and higher. At $900, one couple dropped out, leaving just Tom and Jennifer Martinez, a young pair who'd gotten married the year before. "$900 going once," the mayor said. "Going twice, $1,000. The voice came from the side of the stage, and everyone turned to see who had made the bid. It was my friend Danny from the festival committee, right on cue. "I have $1,000, the mayor announced. "And who are we bidding for?" Danny grinned and pointed toward the crowd. "For the lovely couple right there, Carol Ryder and Brett Landis." The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. People craned their necks to look at Carol and Brett, who were standing 20 feet apart and looking like they'd been struck by lightning. "Oh my," the mayor said, clearly flustered. "I think there's been some confusion." "No confusion," Danny called out. "Everyone knows about Carol and Brett. Might as well make it official." The murmurs turned to gasps and then to excited chatter as the crowd realized what was happening. Phones came out, cameras started recording. Carol's face went from white to red to purple in the span of about 3 seconds. "That's not," she started to say, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd. Brett tried to disappear into the mass of people, but Linda grabbed his arm and yanked him back. "What is he talking about?" she demanded, loud enough for half the crowd to hear. "Linda, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain why someone just bought you and another woman a romantic dinner." The situation was spiraling out of control beautifully. The mayor was trying to restore order, but the crowd was having none of it. This was better than any soap opera, and everyone wanted a front row seat. Carol finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. Someone is playing a sick joke." "Is it a joke?" Linda Landis had pushed her way through the crowd and was now standing directly in front of Carol. "Because I found hotel receipts in my husband's jacket. I found credit card charges for restaurants I've never been to. I found a random earring in his car that doesn't belong to me." The crowd went dead silent. Linda was a quiet woman, a librarian who rarely raised her voice above a whisper. Hearing her drop an F-bomb in public was like watching a nun start a bar fight. "Linda, please," Brett said, but she whirled on him with fury in her eyes. "Don't you Linda please me, you lying piece of crap?" She drew back her hand and slapped him across the face with a sound like a loud crack. The crowd gasped, and someone started applauding. Brett stumbled backward, holding his cheek. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Linda turned back to Carol. And you home-wrecking witch, how long? I don't have to listen to this, Carol said, but her voice was shaking. 3 years, Hannah said, stepping forward from the crowd. It's been going on for 3 years, Mrs. Landis. My mom told us at my birthday party. The crowd turned to stare at Hannah, then back at Carol. The silence stretched out like a held breath, broken only by the distant sound of carnival music from the midway. Hannah, don't, Carol pleaded. Don't what? Don't tell the truth. You're the one who said you were tired of pretending. Hannah's voice was steady, but I could see tears in her eyes. You're the one who said you wanted everyone to know? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I stepped forward, removing my sunglasses and baseball cap. Because it sounded pretty clear to me. Carol's eyes went wide when she saw me. Alan. Hello, Carol. Enjoying the festival? The crowd was eating this up, phones recording every word. By tonight, this would be all over social media. By tomorrow, it would be the talk of 3 counties. This is harassment, Carol said. You're trying to humiliate me in public. I don't have to try. You're doing a fine job of that yourself. Brett finally found his backbone, or what passed for one. Leave her alone, Alan. This is between you and Carol. Is it? I turned to face him, and he took an involuntary step backward. Because last I checked, it takes 2 people to have an affair. You've been sleeping with my wife for 3 years, Brett. That makes it between you and me, too. Daddy, Hannah said quietly. Everyone's watching. She was right. The entire festival had ground to a halt, with hundreds of people gathered around the stage watching our family drama unfold. I should have felt embarrassed, but instead I felt liberated. For the first time in weeks, everyone knew the truth. Let them watch, I said. Let them see what 27 years of marriage gets you. Carol was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Please, Alan, not like this. How would you prefer it? Should we go home and discuss it over cake again? The crowd laughed, and Carol flinched like I'd slapped her. Brett put his arm around her shoulders in a gesture that was probably meant to be protective, but just looked pathetic. We're leaving, he announced. Good idea, Linda said. Don't come home, Brett. I'll have your stuff on the lawn by tonight. Brett and Carol pushed through the crowd toward the parking area, followed by catcalls and jeers. Linda watched them go, then turned to me. I'm sorry, Alan. I should have told you sooner. It's not your fault. I knew something was wrong. I should have said something. We both should have. I put my hand on her shoulder. But we're saying something now. The crowd began to disperse, people drifting back to their festival activities, but still buzzing with excitement about what they'd witnessed. The mayor tried to restart the auction, but nobody was paying attention anymore. Hannah took my arm. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. No, you're not. None of this is fine. She was right, but it was necessary. Carol and Brett had humiliated me in private for 3 years. Now they knew how it felt to be humiliated in public. But I wasn't done yet. The festival was just the opening act. The real show was still to come. The federal agents came for Brett on Tuesday morning, just like Mike Perry had predicted. I watched from my van across the street as they let him out of his apartment building in handcuffs, his lawyer trailing behind with a briefcase and a grim expression. Brett's arrest made the front page of the local paper and the evening news. Local sales manager charged with embezzlement, the headline read. The story included details about the 2-year investigation, the amount of money involved, nearly $200,000, and the potential prison sentence he was facing. Carol's name wasn't mentioned in the news coverage, but it didn't matter. Everyone in town knew about their affair now, thanks to the festival incident. People were already connecting the dots, wondering how much Carol had known about Brett's illegal activities. I could have helped the speculation along, could have shared the evidence Mike had given me about Brett using stolen money to fund his affair. But I didn't need to. The gossip network was doing the work for me. Shannon Murphy was the first casualty. I'd been watching her house for 3 days, learning her routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she left for her book club meeting at 2 o'clock, returning home around 5. Her husband, Jim, worked construction and didn't get home until 6, which gave Shannon a convenient window for her own extracurricular activities. On Thursday afternoon, I followed her to the Riverside Motel, the same place Carol and Brett had been using for their trysts. Shannon parked next to a familiar car, Marcus Hoffman's silver Honda Civic. I waited in the parking lot for an hour, then made my move. Shannon had left her purse in her car, probably figuring the motel parking lot was safe enough. It took me about 30 seconds to jimmy the lock on her passenger door, a skill I'd learned in the Navy and refined during my security business. Shannon's phone was in her purse, and like most people her age, she didn't bother with a passcode. I scrolled through her contacts until I found what I was looking for, a group text thread called Girls' Night that included Carol, Linda Landis, Marcus's wife Lisa, and about 15 other women from town. I started typing. Hey, ladies, just wanted to let everyone know that my Tuesday and Thursday book club meetings are actually me being with Marcus Hoffman at the Riverside Motel. Sorry for lying to you all for the past year. XOXO Shannon. I hit send and watched the message go out to Shannon's entire social circle. Then I put the phone back in her purse, locked the car, and drove away. My own phone started buzzing with notifications about 10 minutes later. The group text was exploding with responses ranging from shock to outrage to dark amusement. Within an hour, the message had been screenshot and shared across half the town's social media networks. Shannon and Marcus emerged from the motel room 45 minutes later to find their affair exposed to the entire town. I watched from across the street as Shannon checked her phone and started screaming. Marcus tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason, throwing her purse at him and calling him every name in the book. By evening, both their marriages were over. Carol tried to call me that night, probably hoping I'd feel guilty about destroying her friend's life. I let it go to voicemail. Alan, this has to stop. Shannon's devastated. Her kids are asking questions she can't answer. This isn't justice, it's cruelty. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had crossed a line. But Carol had crossed a line first, and she dragged her friends across it with her. They'd all been complicit in her affair, helping her lie to me for 3 years. Now they were facing the consequences of those choices. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The next domino fell on Saturday. Marcus Hoffman was a creature of habit, just like everyone else in this town. Every Saturday morning, he went to the gym at 7 a.m., worked out for exactly 90 minutes, then stopped at the coffee shop on Main Street before heading home. His routine was so predictable you could set your watch by it. I was waiting for him in the coffee shop parking lot. Marcus. He spun around, nearly dropping his latte. Jesus, Alan, you scared me. We need to talk. Look, I'm sorry about what happened with Shannon. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. But people did get hurt. My wife, your wife, Shannon's husband, their kids, all because you couldn't keep it in your pants. Marcus looked around nervously, probably hoping someone would come to his rescue. But it was early on a Saturday morning, and the parking lot was mostly empty. What do you want? He asked. I want you to understand something. Carol's affair didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because people like you and Shannon enabled it. You covered for her, lied for her, helped her deceive me. That's not... It's exactly how it was. I stepped closer, using my height advantage to intimidate him. You think this is a game, Marcus? You think other people's marriages are your entertainment? No, of course not. Then why did you help Carol lie to me for 3 years? Marcus swallowed hard. She said you guys were having problems. She said you were separated. Did you ever ask me about that? No. Did you ever think to verify her story? No. You just took the word of a woman who was cheating on her husband and decided to help her do it. Marcus's face was red now, whether from shame or anger I couldn't tell. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And now you're going to pay for it. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. Inside were photographs of him and Shannon at the motel, along with copies of credit card statements showing charges for hotel rooms and restaurants. Your wife Lisa deserves to know the truth about what kind of man she married, I said. You can tell her yourself, or I can do it for you. You already destroyed my marriage. What more do you want? I want you to leave town. Marcus stared at me. What? You heard me. Pack up your crap and leave. Find a job somewhere else, start over, whatever. But I don't want to see your face in this town anymore. You can't make me leave. Can't I? I smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Your company is going to be under federal investigation because of Brett's embezzlement. They're going to be looking at everyone who worked with him, including you. How long do you think it'll take them to find out about your affair with Shannon? How long before they start wondering if you were involved in Brett's schemes? I wasn't involved in anything illegal. Maybe not, but mud sticks, Marcus. Even if you're cleared of any criminal wrongdoing, your reputation will be shot. No one will want to hire you. Your wife will divorce you and take half of everything. Your kids will be ashamed to have your name. I let that sink in for a moment, then continued. Or you can leave quietly, take a job in another state, start fresh where nobody knows your history. It's your choice. Marcus crumpled the envelope in his hands, his face a mask of defeat. How long do I have? 2 weeks. He nodded and walked away without another word. I watched him drive off, then went home to wait for the next phase of my plan. Carol's inner circle was crumbling, just as I'd intended. Shannon was facing divorce and social exile. Marcus was preparing to flee town in disgrace. Brett was looking at federal prison time. But Carol herself remained untouched, protected by her job and her ability to play the victim. She was telling anyone who would listen that I was harmful, that I was stalking her, that she was afraid for her safety. It was time to change that narrative. It was time for the final confrontation. The abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of town had been closed for 15 years, a victim of changing times and corporate consolidation. The ride stood like rusted skeletons against the gray October sky, and weeds grew through cracks in the asphalt. It was the kind of place that attracted teenagers looking for a place to drink and urban explorers seeking the perfect Instagram shot. It was also the perfect place for a final confrontation. I'd chosen the location carefully. The park was isolated but not completely deserted. There was enough foot traffic to ensure we wouldn't be completely alone, but not so much that we'd be interrupted. The old Ferris wheel still worked, thanks to a generator I'd brought and some basic electrical repairs. Most importantly, the place had a sense of drama that appealed to my need for theatrical justice. Getting Carol and Brett to come here had been easier than I'd expected. All it took was a text message from an untraceable phone, claiming to be from a lawyer who wanted to discuss a settlement. People will believe anything when they're desperate, and Carol and Brett were definitely desperate. They arrived separately, Carol in her silver sedan and Brett in a rental car. His BMW was still in the shop, getting the scratches repaired. I watched from the shadows as they met near the entrance gate, both looking nervous and uncertain. "This is a bad idea," Brett said. "We should have brought lawyers." "We can't afford lawyers," Carol replied. "Not with your legal bills." "My legal bills? You're the one who wanted the expensive hotel rooms and fancy dinners." "I didn't know you were paying for them with stolen money." They were already turning on each other, just as I'd hoped. Guilt and fear had a way of destroying relationships, especially ones built on deception. I stepped out from behind the ticket booth, and they both jumped. "Hello, Carol." "Brett." "Alan," Carol said, trying to sound calm. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Did I agree to that? I don't remember agreeing to anything." Brett looked around nervously. "Where's the lawyer?" "What lawyer?" "The one who sent us the text message about a settlement." I smiled. "That was me." Carol's face went pale. "You tricked us. The same way you tricked me for 3 years. Funny how that works." "What do you want?" Brett demanded. "I want to show you something." I gestured toward the Ferris wheel, which was slowly turning, thanks to the generator I'd set up. "Shall we take a ride?" "We're not going anywhere with you," Carol said. "Yes, you are, because if you don't, those photos of you two go to every news outlet in the state, along with a detailed account of how Brett used embezzled money to fund your affair." Brett's face crumpled. "You said you wouldn't involve Carol in the federal case." "I said I wouldn't help them build a case against her. I never said I wouldn't destroy her reputation." Carol looked back and forth between Brett and me, trying to understand what we were talking about. "What federal case? Didn't Brett tell you? He's been stealing money from his company for 2 years. The FBI estimates he took about $200,000, and a good chunk of it went to paying for your little love affair." "That's not true," Carol said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, jewelry, weekend trips, all paid for with stolen money. You're an accessory to federal crimes, Carol. Even if they can't prove you knew where the money was coming from, the scandal will destroy you." I started walking toward the Ferris wheel, and after a moment's hesitation, they followed. The old ride creaked and groaned as it turned, but it was structurally sound. I checked it thoroughly before setting up this meeting. "Get in," I said, gesturing to one of the passenger cars. "This is insane," Brett said. "This is justice. Get in, or I make those phone calls right now." They climbed into the passenger car, and I locked the safety bar in place. Then I walked over to the control panel and sent them up into the sky. The Ferris wheel carried them slowly upward, giving them a perfect view of the abandoned park and the town beyond. I waited until they reached the top, then stopped the ride, leaving them suspended 50 feet in the air. "Alan!" Carol called down. Let us down! Not yet. We haven't finished our conversation. I pulled out my phone and activated the speaker function, then dialed a number I'd memorized. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Hello? Linda, it's Alan Ryder. I have Brett here with me and he has something he wants to tell you. I don't want to talk to him. Trust me, you want to hear this. I held the phone up toward the Ferris wheel. Go ahead, Brett. Tell Linda how sorry you are. This is crazy, Brett shouted down. Tell her, or I leave you up there until the fire department comes to get you down. Imagine how that'll look on the evening news. There was a long pause. Then Brett's voice carried down from the top of the Ferris wheel. Linda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Where are you? Linda's voice came through the phone speaker. This is hard to explain. He's at the old amusement park, I said into the phone. 50 feet up on the Ferris wheel, having a conversation about choices and consequences. Alan, what are you doing? I'm giving your husband a chance to tell the truth for once in his life. I looked up at the passenger car, where Brett and Carol were having what appeared to be an intense conversation. Carol was gesturing wildly, probably trying to convince Brett not to say anything that would implicate her in his crimes. Brett, I called up, tell Linda about the money. What money? Linda's voice came through the speaker. Another long pause, then Brett's voice, barely audible. I took money from the company to pay for things. What kind of things? Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for Carol. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Linda breathing through the phone, could almost feel her processing this information. How much money? She finally asked. A lot? How much, Brett? $200,000. Linda's gasp was audible even through the phone speaker. Oh my God. I'm going to prison, Linda. 5 to 10 years, maybe more. Good, Linda said and hung up. I pocketed my phone and looked up at the Ferris wheel. Carol was crying now, her sobs carrying down on the wind. Brett was slumped in his seat, looking like a man who'd finally run out of options. Alan, please, Carol called down. Let us down. We'll do whatever you want. What I want is for you to understand what you've done. Not just to me, but to everyone whose lives you've destroyed with your selfishness. I started the Ferris wheel again, bringing them slowly down to ground level. When their car reached the bottom, I unlocked the safety bar and stepped back. Carol climbed out on shaky legs, her makeup ruined by tears. Brett followed, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. It's over, I said. Your affair, your lies, your ability to hurt people without consequences, it's all over. What happens now? Carol asked. Now you live with what you've done. Brett goes to prison. You get divorced and start over, probably in another town where people don't know your history. Shannon and Marcus have already figured that out. You destroyed their lives too. They destroyed their own lives. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Carol looked around the abandoned amusement park, at the rusted rides and broken dreams, and something seemed to break inside her. I loved you once, she said quietly. I know. I loved you too. Can we try to work this out? I studied her face, looking for some sign of the woman I'd married 27 years ago. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize and couldn't trust. No, I said, we can't. Brett cleared his throat. What about the photos, the evidence about the money? I'll keep it to myself as long as you both stay away from me and Hannah. No contact, no attempts at a reconciliation, no sob stories to mutual friends. You disappear from our lives completely. And if we don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then I make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you really are. They left without another word, walking back to their cars through the gathering dusk. I watched them drive away, then turned off the generator and packed up my equipment. As I was loading the generator into my truck, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Hannah approaching, having apparently been watching the whole confrontation from somewhere in the shadows. How long have you been here? I asked. Long enough. She helped me lift the generator into the truck bed. You know this won't fix anything, right? Mom's still going to be Mom. Brett's still going to prison. Nothing's really changed. Everything's changed. The truth is out now. No more lies, no more pretending, no more living in denial. Hannah nodded slowly. I guess that's something. We drove home in comfortable silence through the streets of the town where I'd lived my entire adult life. Tomorrow, people would be talking about what had happened at the old amusement park. The story would grow in the telling, becoming legend, becoming myth. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt at peace. Carol filed for divorce the following week. Brett was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Shannon and Marcus both left town, starting over in different states. The gossip eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals and fresher drama. I kept the house and the business. Hannah finished college and moved back home for a while, helping me adjust to life as a divorced man. Linda Landis and I became friends, bonded by our shared experience of betrayal and recovery. The truth, as it turned out, really had set us free. 6 months later, I was having dinner at Gina's pub when she brought up the subject I'd been avoiding. "You ever think about dating again?" she asked. "It's too soon. It's been 6 months since the divorce was final. You're allowed to move on." "I'm not ready." Gina refilled my beer and studied my face. "You know what I think? I think you're afraid." "Of what?" "Of trusting someone again, of getting hurt again." She was probably right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal still too raw. Maybe someday I'd be ready to take that risk again, but not yet. "Besides," I said, "who'd want to date a guy who destroyed half the marriages in town?" Gina laughed. "You'd be surprised. There are a lot of women around here who think you're a hero." "A hero? You stood up for yourself. You fought back. You didn't just roll over and take it like most men would have." I thought about that as I walked home through the quiet streets. Maybe I was a hero to some people, or maybe I was just a man who'd been pushed too far and decided to push back. Either way, I'd gotten my revenge. Carol and Brett had learned that actions have consequences. Shannon and Marcus had learned that secrets don't stay secret forever. And I'd learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to take it yourself. The convention debt had been paid in full.